My boss told me, don't touch anything at work, so I did exactly that. What happened next left her speechless and totally backfired. Stick around to find out how I got the ultimate revenge.
Hey, I'm Chris Turner. I'm 19 years old and living just outside Chicago. I've been working part-time at a small event venue called the Grand Oak for about a year now. It's not the flashiest place, but it gets a decent number of weddings, corporate events, and community fundraisers. The job's simple, setting up chairs, mics, lighting, and all the behind-the-scenes tech stuff. It's hard work, but I've gotten used to it. I know where everything goes, and the manager, Jeff, has always trusted me to handle the setup on my own. We usually show up early for these events, like 7 a.m. for a 10 a.m. start, so we can get everything squared away. On a typical day, I'd be in charge of laying out the chairs, plugging in the microphones, setting up the speakers, and making sure the lighting is perfect. It's a routine I've done a dozen times, and honestly, I kind of enjoy it. I can throw on some music, zone out, and get everything done before the guests even arrive. Jeff never gave me any trouble, and I never had to ask for directions. He'd just give me a nod and tell me, "Get it done, Chris," and I'd get to work. But one day, everything changed. It was a Saturday morning. The venue was booked for a big charity auction event, and Jeff had called out for the day. So, a new supervisor, Valerie, came in to fill in for him. She was probably in her late 20s, sharp as a tack, and she had that "I'm in charge" aura about her. She had the whole manager look, suit, clipboard, the whole package. As soon as I walked in, she looked me up and down, then, in the most commanding voice she could muster, said, "From now on, you don't touch anything unless I give you permission. Clear?" I blanked. I wasn't used to anyone giving me direct orders like that. Jeff had always trusted me to do what needed to be done, but Valerie seemed different. I just nodded and said, "Got it." She didn't even wait for me to ask any questions. She just turned around and started walking off, clipboard in hand. At first, I wasn't sure what to do. I've been doing this gig for a while. I knew what needed to be done. But here I was, supposed to stand around and wait for permission. So I did what she asked. I stood by the door, arms crossed, trying to figure out what to do next. The room was a mess. The chairs were stacked in the corner. The mics hadn't been unboxed yet. The cables were tangled up like someone had been playing jump rope with them. And the stage lights? Completely off. But I didn't touch a thing. I just stood there, waiting. The minutes dragged by. 20 minutes, 30 minutes. My stomach started to growl. The event was coming up soon, and everything needed to be set up. But Valerie wasn't doing anything either. She was sitting by the entrance, flipping through some papers on her clipboard, not noticing the chaos around her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she stood up and walked back into the room, clipboard in hand. The second she walked in, her eyes widened as she looked around the room. Her mouth opened, but no words came out at first. Then she looked at me with absolute disbelief. "Why hasn't anything been done?" she snapped. I couldn't help it. I smiled, trying to hold back a chuckle. "I was waiting for permission, just like you told me." Her face turned red. I could see the frustration building up, but she didn't say anything. She just sighed, threw up her hands, and started going to work herself. She untangled the mic cables, set up the chairs, and started messing with the lights. I stayed by the door, watching her scramble to do everything on her own. The whole thing felt a bit ridiculous, to be honest. But hey, I was following orders. I wasn't about to jump in and help when I had been told not to touch anything. Eventually, Jeff showed up about 15 minutes later, looking a little confused. He walked into the venue, took one look around, and immediately realized what had happened. I could see him raise an eyebrow when he saw me standing still, just observing Valerie running around. He didn't say anything, though. He just gave me a knowing look and turned to Valerie.
"Everything good?" Jeff asked, glancing around at the half-set-up room. Valerie forced a tight smile and nodded. "Yeah, just getting everything finished up. A little behind, but we'll manage." Jeff didn't press the issue, but he didn't seem too thrilled about it either. I could tell he was wondering why she hadn't delegated tasks properly. But in the end, he didn't get involved. He just told me to help her out with the final details and went on his way to check on other things. The event went off without a hitch, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Next event, 2 weeks later, Valerie was back again, this time for a fancy dinner gala. I was already dreading it. The second I saw her walk through the door, clipboard in hand, she gave me that same look, the "I'm in charge here" look. This time she didn't even say good morning. She just walked up to me and said, "Don't touch anything unless I say so. Got it?" I nodded again, though this time I wasn't sure if I was just being polite or if I was actually starting to get a little annoyed. Once again, I stood by the door while the room remained untouched. The chairs were stacked, the cables still tangled, the mics still sealed in their boxes. The lighting completely off. I waited. She didn't move. I didn't move. But this time I was determined. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. So I waited, watching her as she kept glancing at her clipboard and then back at the room, clearly annoyed at the situation. Time passed. I couldn't help but feel like a spectator at my own job. Valerie's impatience was starting to show. She was pacing around the room now, glancing at her watch every few seconds, and I could tell she was getting frustrated. But I wasn't about to budge. She had told me to wait, and that's exactly what I was going to do. 30 minutes passed. I could feel my stomach growling louder with every minute, but I didn't dare touch anything. Valerie finally stopped pacing and looked around the room with a heavy sigh. She was probably realizing that nothing was going to get done if she didn't take charge of it herself. Without a word, she snapped her fingers at me. "Chris, come over here and start setting up the chairs." I stood up, unfolded my arms, and slowly walked over to her. But instead of immediately jumping in like she expected, I just stood there for a second and gave her a look. "Do you want me to start on the chairs, or should I wait for you to tell me again?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral, but there was a hint of sarcasm that I couldn't hide. Her face turned crimson. "Start setting up the chairs now," she said through gritted teeth. I smiled. Finally. I grabbed the first chair and started setting them up in rows, but I took my time. I wasn't rushing. If she wanted me to work, I was going to make her feel the full weight of her command. As I placed each chair, I could feel her glaring at me, probably wishing she could do the job herself. But she was the one who had insisted on this whole "don't touch anything until I say so" rule. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. It wasn't until an hour later that the whole setup was done. Chairs, mics, cables, and lights, everything was in place. But by then, the event was just 30 minutes away. Valerie had been running around, clearly stressed, but I stayed by the door like I was told, hands in my pockets, trying to look as unbothered as possible. When everything was finally finished, Valerie didn't thank me. She didn't acknowledge that I had followed her orders to the letter. Instead, she just gave me a tight, forced smile and said, "Next time, just do what you usually do." I raised an eyebrow at her. "You sure about that? Because last time you specifically told me not to touch anything unless you told me to." She looked at me for a second like she was about to snap again, but then she just sighed. "Yes, fine. Just do your job next time. It's easier that way." I shrugged. "Got it." And with that, I walked out of the room to get some much-needed food. A few days passed, and we were gearing up for another event, a wedding reception this time. I wasn't thrilled about the constant back and forth with Valerie, but I figured it couldn't be as bad as the last time. I was wrong. When I showed up, she was already there, clipboard in hand, and she barely looked at me when I walked in. Without even saying hi, she pointed at the stack of chairs in the corner and said, "Get started, but don't touch anything else unless I tell you." It was the same script again. I was getting pretty sick of it at this point, but I didn't say anything. I just nodded and started working. This time, though, I wasn't going to wait around so long. I figured she could either trust me to do my job or suffer the consequences. I moved quicker than I had before, setting up the chairs, connecting the mics, and arranging the cables without a word from her. Half an hour later, the room was set. The chairs were all in place, the mics were plugged in, and the lights were adjusted. There was still a bit of work to be done with the sound equipment, but I had made significant progress without needing her to tell me what to do. I looked over at Valerie, who was standing in the corner, watching me with a kind of stunned expression. She was clearly annoyed, but I didn't care anymore. I had done what she asked, but I wasn't going to sit around and wait for her approval when I knew how to handle the job. She finally walked over to me and muttered, "How did you get all this done so quickly?" I just shrugged, not wanting to get into it. Guess I just know the drill by now. Valerie didn't respond. She just walked over to the sound system and started adjusting things herself. The rest of the setup went smoothly, but the tension was palpable. I could tell she was frustrated with me, and I could barely hide the satisfaction of seeing her struggle with the same things I'd been handling for months without issue. As the event started, everything went well. The wedding reception was a success, but there was still a lingering feeling that something wasn't quite right. I could tell Valerie was walking around, checking every corner, probably wondering if she'd missed something. She was the type to micromanage everything, and it was clear that she didn't like how smoothly everything was going without her constant intervention. After the event, Valerie called me over again. This time I could tell she was trying to be cordial, but the tension was still there. "Chris," she started, her voice slightly less forceful than before, "I just want to say you did a good job today, but I need you to follow the instructions more closely next time, okay?" I nodded, not bothering to hide my grin. "Sure thing, Valerie. Just let me know what you want, and I'll make it happen." She smiled, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled with how things had turned out. I didn't mind, though. I had won. The next time she showed up, it wasn't even an issue anymore. She barely said anything to me at all. I just went back to doing what I usually do, getting everything set up quickly and efficiently. Valerie had learned her lesson, and I was back to my usual role, only this time with a little extra satisfaction. Over the next few weeks, Valerie seemed to change. At first, she was still a little tense around me, but she started to trust me more. The micromanagement had faded, and instead of hovering over my shoulder, she'd give me a few pointers here and there, and then leave me to do my thing. But it wasn't the same as before. She didn't give orders as frequently, and she certainly didn't insist on standing around waiting for my every move. It was clear that she had realized something. I wasn't some rookie who needed to be babysat. I had the job down pat, and trying to control me with her wait for permission routine was only causing unnecessary delays. The only reason I didn't push her to admit she was wrong was because I didn't need to. She'd figured it out herself. But there was still a small part of me that couldn't help but enjoy how the whole situation had played out. Valerie had come in all high and mighty, trying to run the show like she knew best. But in the end, I'd followed her instructions to the letter and let her feel the consequences of her own actions. She had to learn the hard way that sometimes people don't always need a babysitter to do their job well. One Friday morning, I was setting up for a big anniversary gala at the Grand Oak. It was the type of event where everything had to be flawless, perfect lighting, sound, the whole shebang. When I showed up, I saw Valerie already standing by the sound system, trying to adjust the volume levels. She didn't even look up as I walked in. I was used to it by now, so I just got to work, setting up the chairs, checking the cables, and running through my usual checklist. Everything was running smoothly, and I was ahead of schedule. Then, as I was adjusting the lights, I noticed Valerie standing at the back of the room, watching me from a distance. She was scribbling something on her clipboard, probably tracking my every move. But this time, there was no tension, no pressure, just a quiet acknowledgement that I knew what I was doing. It felt like the calm after the storm. When the setup was done, I went over to her. She didn't say anything at first, but when I stood next to her, she finally spoke. "Chris," she said, her tone a little more relaxed than usual, "I just wanted to apologize for the way I treated you before. I was too controlling. You obviously know what you're doing, and I should have trusted you from the start." I blanked. I wasn't expecting that. "It's no problem, really. You were just doing your job, trying to make sure everything went smoothly." She nodded. "I get it now. But from here on out, I'll trust you to handle it without so much interference. You've earned that." That moment felt like a bit of a victory, not just because she had apologized, but because I had stuck to my guns. I had made it clear that I wasn't going to be micromanaged, and by simply doing my job the way I always had, I'd shown her that I was capable of handling things without anyone breathing down my neck. The event went off without a hitch. The guests were happy, the sound system worked perfectly, and the lighting was just right. It felt good to know that in the end I had proven myself, not just to Valerie, but to anyone else who might have doubted me. After the event, I was cleaning up with the rest of the team when Marcus, the regular manager, came over to me. He gave me a nod of approval and said, "Hey, you did a solid job today, Chris. I can always count on you to get things done." I smiled and nodded back. "Thanks, Marcus. Just doing my thing."
He looked over at Valerie, who was speaking to one of the event coordinators. Then he turned back to me and said, "You know, I've been hearing good things about you. Valerie's a little more relaxed around you now. I think you really made an impact." I didn't say anything, but I couldn't help but feel a little pride swell inside me. It was a nice feeling, knowing that I'd handled the situation with patience and professionalism, and in the end, I'd come out on top. It wasn't just about the job, it was about standing my ground. Sometimes people need to learn that they can't control everything, especially when they don't have all the facts. And in this case, Valerie had learned that lesson the hard way. As for Valerie, well, she never gave me trouble again. And while we never became best friends, I could tell there was a mutual respect between us. Sometimes that's all it takes. A little bit of time, a little bit of patience, and knowing when to let your actions speak louder than words. From then on, I just kept doing what I do best. Setting up the venue, getting everything ready, and making sure the guests had a great time. But now I did it with a sense of satisfaction, knowing that I had earned the trust of my team, and that no one, not even a supervisor with a clipboard, could take that away from me.
If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who'd appreciate it. Thanks for watching.